Hey guys, welcome back to Sleep Among Titans, where we drift through strange and quiet corners of the past. Perfect for listening before you sleep. Tonight, our journey takes us to a city you might recognize, but in a time when it was transformed into something alien and strange. We are in London. But it is not the London of today. It is the London of 1684 in the heart of a brutal winter so cold it has a name, the Great Frost. This is not a story of a single dramatic event. It is a story of quiet, relentless endurance and of a long, cold night. The world for you has shrunk to the size of this single room. You are in a small garret, an attic room at the very top of a leaning timber-framed house, not far from the river. The air itself feels solid, a palpable biting cold that seeps through the thin wooden walls and rises up from the floorboards. It is an unwanted guest who has invited itself in and refuses to leave. Every breath you take is a small white cloud, a fleeting ghost that proves you are still warm, still alive in a room that is doing its very best to steal that warmth away. Your attention is fixed on the single small window, not on the view of the frozen city outside, but on the glass itself. A terrible and beautiful miracle has happened there. Ice thick and white has bloomed on the inside of the pane. It has formed intricate branching patterns, like a ghostly crystalline fern, or a delicate frozen flower sculpted by the cold itself. It is beautiful, the kind of terrible beauty a perfectly still frozen predator might have. You can reach out and trace its delicate patterns with the tip of your finger, feeling the intense biting cold radiate into your skin without ever touching the glass. The sounds of the night are small and sharp. The groan of the old house as it contracts in the crushing cold. The mournful high-pitched whistle of the wind as it finds a tiny crack in the eaves above your head. It is a lonely, desolate sound. But beneath the whistle of the wind there is something else, something strange. It is the faint, muffled sound of music. A distant pop that might be a firework. A burst of faraway laughter so thin and ghostly it could be your imagination. It is the sound of the Great Frost Fair, a bizarre and temporary city of pubs, shops, and spectacles that has sprung up on the frozen surface of the River Thames. It is the sound of a city celebrating its own strange and beautiful disaster, and somehow the sound of that distant joy, that far-off warmth, only makes your small, cold room feel even smaller, even colder, and even more alone. This is not a night for grand adventures. It is not a night for heroes. It is a night for quiet survival. Your only duty, your only great and noble task, is to see the sun rise. So let the cold settle around you like a heavy blanket. Let the sounds of the distant fair become a strange, half-forgotten dream. Your long, cold night has begun. You let your finger fall from the cold glass of the window pane, the brief, sharp sensation of the frost leaving a phantom ache in your skin. From your high garret room, you are a lonely sentinel perched at the top of a sleeping, groaning house in the heart of a city that has been fundamentally transformed. The cold has become more than weather. It is an occupying force, a silent, invading army from the north that has conquered London without firing a single shot. It has seeped into the very stones of St. Paul's, crept through the thickest oaken doors, and achieved what no foreign navy has ever managed. It has silenced the great River Thames. You cannot see the river clearly from your small window, only a sliver of its strange white expanse between the leaning rooftops. But you can feel its presence. For weeks, the familiar, comforting rhythm of the city, the rumble of carts to the docks, the cries of the watermen, the deep horns of the ships arriving with the tide, has been replaced by a profound and unnerving stillness. The great artery of London has frozen solid, its lifeblood turned to ice. The stories you hear from your master at the print shop and from the other tenants huddled around the single sputtering fire in the common room downstairs are fantastical. They speak of the river not as a smooth sheet of ice, but as a chaotic, broken landscape. Great jagged flows caught in the current when the freeze first set in are now locked in place like the shards of a broken plate. In other places, the tides pushed up massive slabs of ice into strange groaning mounds before the final freeze took hold. It is a white desert where a brown river once flowed, a place of alien beauty and treacherous footing. The ships, the great merchant vessels and coal barges that are the city's lifeline, are trapped mid-river. Their masts standing stark and black against the gray sky like the dead trees of a frozen skeletal forest. But this great disaster has not brought the city to a standstill. it has given birth to a bizarre and miraculous new world. On that solid road of ice, a new city has appeared, a temporary metropolis of pure spectacle and desperate commerce. They call it the Frost Fair. From the stories you piece together a picture of it in your mind. You imagine the streets that have been carved out on the ice, given names like Friesland Street and Ice Alley. You imagine the rows and rows of hastily built wooden booths and canvas tents, a chaotic marketplace where there was once only water. You can almost smell the things they sell, faint ghostly scents that sometimes drift up to your high window on the wind. The rich, spicy aroma of hot gingerbread, the sweet tang of mulled cider, and the savory promise of whole oxen being roasted on massive spits over roaring bonfires built right on the ice. As a printer's apprentice, you are particularly fascinated by the stories of the rival printers who have dragged their small, heavy presses out onto the river. You can picture them, their hands black with ink, their faces red from the cold, stamping out souvenir cards for wealthy lords and ladies who want proof that they too walked on water. The clank of their presses, a sound so familiar to you, feels a world away. At night like now, the fair becomes a ghost of itself. You cannot see the lights, but you can hear the sounds distorted and made strange by the cold, dense air. The music from a fiddle in a canvas tavern sounds thin and reedy, a lonely thread of sound in the vast silence. A sudden burst of laughter from a group of revelers reaches you, not as a sound of joy, but as a distant echoing chatter, like the cry of a strange night bird. The occasional pop of a firework is not a sharp crack, but a dull, low thud that seems to shake the frozen air itself. It is a ghostly symphony, the sound of a party you will never attend. And that is for the best, you remind yourself. For you understand the other side of this spectacle. You understand the grim reality that the fair is a carnival floating on a sea of quiet hardship. The frozen river means the port is closed. The ships carrying the cheap sea coal from Newcastle are locked in ice at the mouth of the estuary. The barges carrying grain and vegetables from the countryside are frozen solid in the canals miles away. You think of the thousands of watermen, the men whose entire lives were spent rowing passengers from one side of the Thames to the other. They are all out of work. Perhaps they are the ones running the strange stalls on the ice now, a desperate attempt to earn a few pennies. You think of the dock workers, the sailors, the merchants, all idle. The consequences are felt right here in your small room. The price of a sack of coal, if you can even find one, has more than tripled. The halfpenny loaf of bread you bought yesterday was noticeably smaller and denser than the one you bought last week. The water from the public pump down the street is a solid block of ice, and every drop you need for drinking or washing must be chipped away and melted over your precious dwindling fire. You turn away from the window, from the beautiful, terrible frost flower and the ghostly sounds of the fair. You have contemplated the strange frozen world outside. Now you must face the small, cold, and intensely real world inside your room. The grand spectacle of the frozen Thames is a story and abstraction, but the immediate, desperate need to stay warm to survive this one long, cold night, that is your reality. The reality of a few precious lumps of coal and the demanding, hungry mouth of your own small hearth. You turn away from the window, from the ghost of the city on the ice. The distant party is not your concern. Your concern is here in this room, in the immediate and pressing reality of the cold. The grand spectacle of the frozen Thames is an abstraction, but the cold is a physical presence. It is your unwanted roommate, your constant companion, and your only defense against it, your only ally, is the small, sullen hearth in the corner of the room. It is not a grand fireplace, such as you might find in the great houses of the Strand. There is no carved mantelpiece, no gleaming brass tools. It is a simple, shallow recess of soot-stained brick with a narrow flue that seems to fight against the smoke more than it helps it. You have come to think of it as a small, demanding, and ill-tempered god. Its appetite is endless, its moods are fickle, and its gifts of warmth are meager and grudgingly given. But it is the only god you have in this cold high room, and so you must serve it with all the devotion you can muster. Your offerings are laid out beside it. This is your treasure pile, your entire fortune for the night. It is not much. A small, carefully stacked mound of fuel gathered over weeks. At the bottom are the aristocrats of your collection, a half-dozen lumps of dense black sea coal. You handle them as if they were jewels. They are your best hope, for they burn long and hot, but they are almost impossible to get now with the river frozen and the price having tripled. To burn one is a serious investment. Next are the commoners, the splintered dry remains of a wooden packing crate that you found discarded in an alley behind the print shop. This wood is light and catches fire easily. It provides a quick, cheerful but fleeting flame. This is your kindling, your opening gambit in the long negotiation with the cold. Finally, there is the driftwood you scavenged from the muddy banks of the Thames weeks ago before the Great Freeze. It is pale and smooth as bone cured by the salt of the estuary. You know from experience that it is difficult to light and gives off a thick, acrid smoke. But it smolders for a very long time. It does not offer much warmth, but it offers endurance. This is your rearguard, the fuel you will use in the deepest hours of the night to keep the embers alive, a slow sacrifice to ensure the fire does not die completely. Every piece you choose to burn is a strategic decision. A piece burned now in the early evening is a piece you will not have at 3 in the morning when the cold is at its most predatory. You kneel before the hearth. The fire you lit hours ago has died down. All that remains is a soft, shallow bed of pulsing red embers, like the sleeping heart of a small, hidden animal. You study them, assessing their strength. There is enough life left in them to begin again. You turn to your treasure pile and select your offerings with the care of a priest preparing a sacrifice. You choose one of the smaller lumps of coal. You must be frugal. You choose 2 of the driest, thinnest pieces of cratewood. You carry them to the hearth as if they were sacred relics. Now the ritual begins. You use a small pair of iron tongs, their handles wrapped in cloth, to protect your hands to gently disturb the embers, waking them. Then you place the pieces of wood onto the glowing bed, not flat, but angled against each other, creating a small tent. You have learned through trial and error that a fire, like a person, needs space to breathe. Finally, you nestle the precious lump of coal into the heart of this small wooden structure. The construction is complete. Now it needs life. You lean in close to the hearth, so close that you can feel the faint residual warmth on your face. The air smells of old soot and cold stone. You purse your lips and you blow. It is not a hard, panicked puff, but a long, slow, steady stream of air aimed directly at the base of the embers. You are giving the fire your own breath, your own warmth. The first breath seems to do nothing. The embers pulse, but do not grow. You take another deeper breath and blow again, longer this time. A few sparks dance upwards. The embers glow brighter, their color shifting from a dull, sleeping red to a fierce, vibrant orange. You can feel a corresponding spark of hope in your own chest. You blow a third time, your vision starting to swim slightly from the effort and the smoke. And then it happens. A tiny yellow tongue of flame flickers to life, licking at the dry edge of the cratewood. It wavers for a moment, a fragile, uncertain thing. You hold your breath, not daring to move, whispering a silent prayer to whatever God might be listening. The flame steadies. It catches. It begins to grow, feeding on the wood, its light a joyful, defiant dance against the encroaching shadows of your room. You sit back on your heels, a wave of relief washing over you. You have won. You have won the first battle of the night. A small, precious circle of warmth begins to radiate from the hearth, pushing back against the immense, oppressive cold. It is a tiny sanctuary in a frozen world. You huddle in it, turning first your front, then your back to the flames, trying to absorb every last particle of heat. You know this victory is temporary. In an hour, the fire will be hungry again, and your small pile of fuel will be a little smaller. But for now, there is this. There is the fire. There is the quiet crackle of the burning wood. And there is the long, cold war of the night, still to be fought. Of course, here is the next part of your story, focusing on the small and solemn ritual of your evening meal. The fire is for the moment stable. A small, precious circle of warmth now pushes back against the oppressive cold of your garret room. The immediate, desperate need for heat has been answered, and in its place, another more fundamental need now makes itself known: hunger. It is a dull, hollow ache in the pit of your stomach, a quiet reminder that a fire is not the only thing that needs fuel to survive the night. It is time for dinner. You rise from your place by the hearth and walk to the far corner of the room, to your pantry. It is not a grand larder, but a simple wooden box with a loose-fitting lid. You lift it, the sound of the creaking wood seeming loud in the quiet room. Inside lies your bounty for the week, a collection of meager provisions that speak of your humble station. There is half of a dark, dense loaf of rye bread already growing stale. There is a single small and slightly wrinkled apple saved from last autumn's meager harvest. And there is a heavy clay jug, about a quarter full of the weak, watery ale that is cheaper than clean water in this frozen city. The menu for tonight's feast is quickly decided, as it is the same as last night's and the night before that. A crust of bread and a mug of warm ale. It is a meal less of pleasure and more of simple necessary function. You begin your preparations with the gravity of a high priest. First the ale. You pour a measure of the thin brown liquid into your only drinking vessel, a dented pewter mug. The ale is cold, and you know from experience that drinking it cold will only steal more of your body's precious warmth. So you place the mug on the warm hearthstones just at the edge of the fire's direct heat. You do not place it in the fire. You learned long ago that this results in a cracked mug and a hissing, steaming mess. You simply let it sit, absorbing the gentle, radiant heat from the bricks. While the ale warms, you attend to the bread. You take the half loaf, which is as hard and unyielding as a block of wood, and you break off a piece. The sound is not a soft tear, but a dry, sharp crack. You take the crust and a long, thin stick, and you hold the bread over the flames, toasting it. The smell of the toasting rye fills the air, a simple, earthy, and comforting aroma. You watch it carefully, turning it over and over until the surface is browned and a little of the hardness has been coaxed out of it. By now, a faint wisp of steam is beginning to rise from the surface of your ale. It is ready. You retrieve the mug, its metal now pleasantly warm to the touch, and return to your seat on the floor before the fire. Your banquet is served. You do not eat quickly. To eat quickly would be to waste the experience, to shorten the one small pleasure of your evening. You perform another small ritual. You dip the hard toasted edge of the bread into the warm ale. The bread, which was hard enough to break a tooth, softens, instantly soaking up the warm liquid like a sponge. You take a bite. The taste is simple, almost non-existent. The bread is bland, the ale is slightly sour. But it is warm. It is sustenance. You chew each mouthful slowly, deliberately making it last. You are not just eating. You are performing the sacred act of staying alive. You take a sip of the ale. It is not strong, but it is warmer than your own blood, and you can feel the liquid warmth spread from your throat down into your chest, a small internal fire to complement the one burning in the hearth. As you sit there, lost in the slow meditative process of your meal, a particularly strong gust of wind rattles the window frame. For a moment, it carries a new scent into your room through a tiny crack in the wall. It is a faint, almost imaginary smell, but you recognize it instantly. It is the rich, savory, mouth-watering aroma of roasting meat. It is the ghost of the great oxen being turned on a spit on the frozen river below. The scent is a key unlocking a door in your mind. You close your eyes, and in the darkness behind your eyelids you conjure a feast. You imagine the skin of the great ox crackling and dripping fat onto the ice. You imagine the street vendors selling hot, savory meat pies, their steam rising in great fragrant clouds in the cold night air. You imagine the taste of roasted chestnuts, hot and sweet from a brazier. You imagine gingerbread rich with spices from faraway lands. You imagine mugs of hot mulled wine thick with cinnamon and cloves. You create a magnificent, impossible banquet in your mind, a feast of pure imagination. Your stomach rumbles a low, traitorous growl. It is unimpressed with your imaginary banquet. It demands real food, but all you can offer it is another piece of ale-soaked bread. You open your eyes. The glorious feast vanishes, replaced by the simple reality of your small room, your dying fire, and your empty mug. You have finished your dinner. You are no longer hungry, but you are far from full. You are simply sustained. You have taken in just enough fuel to keep your own internal fire burning for a few more hours. Outside, the wind howls, carrying the faint mocking promise of other better meals. You are left with the quiet reality of your room, the lingering sour taste of weak ale, and the certain knowledge that for tonight, memory and imagination will have to be your main course. Your meager dinner is finished. The small measure of warmth from the ale spreads through your chest, a fleeting internal comfort that does little to combat the ever-present cold of the room. The fire in the hearth, your small sputtering ally, does its best, but its circle of influence is small. Step more than a few feet away, and the cold reclaims you instantly. The cold is the true master of this room. You have fed yourself. You have fed the fire. And now you must turn your attention to the defense of your shelter itself. You have come to think of the wind as a living entity, a relentless and cunning adversary. It is not just a force of nature. It is a predator constantly circling your small, high refuge, testing its defenses, searching for any crack, any weakness, any tiny entry point to get in and steal what little warmth you possess. You can hear its different voices. Sometimes it is a low, sorrowful moan that seems to speak of all the world's loneliness. At other times, it is a high, sharp, shrieking whistle as it finds a particularly narrow gap to force its way through. And sometimes it is a sudden, violent rattle at the window pane, an impatient and angry demand for entry. Tonight, you decide you will mount a defense. You will not defeat the wind. You know that is impossible, but you will fight it. You will engage in the quiet, desperate, and endlessly repetitive ritual that you call the battle against the drafts. Your arsenal is pitiful, but it is all you have. In a small wooden box beside your cot is a collection of old, threadbare rags. They are the ghosts of old garments a shirt worn until it was too thin to mend, strips torn from a stained and useless sack, the remnants of a woolen stocking that has finally given up. These are your weapons, your mortar, your caulking, your defense against the siege of winter. You begin by surveying the battlefield. You conduct a slow, deliberate inspection of your small, sloping walled room. This is your fortress, and you must know its every weakness. You start with the main point of attack, the window. You run your fingers along the warped wooden frame. Even without touching the frosted glass, you can feel the icy air pouring in through the gaps where the old wood has shrunk away from the stone. It is a constant, invisible waterfall of cold. Next, you examine the walls. Your garret is nestled under the eaves of the old timber-framed house. You can see the dark, heavy beams and the crumbling plaster between them. In the dim firelight, you can spot dozens of tiny hairline fissures, a network of secret pathways for the enemy to infiltrate. Finally, you inspect the door that leads to the unheated stairwell. It is made of old, ill-fitting planks, and there is a significant gap at the bottom, a dark, yawning mouth that constantly inhales the frigid air from the rest of the house. Your room is not a fortress at all, you realize. It is a sieve, but you must try. The act of trying is itself a kind of warmth. The battle begins at the window. You take your longest, most substantial strips of rag and you begin meticulously to stuff them into the gaps. The work is slow and requires a surprising amount of concentration. You fold a strip of cloth just so, then use a small splintered piece of wood to poke it deep into the crevice between wood and stone. You work your way around the entire frame, a quiet, patient surgeon sealing up the wounds of your small shelter. For a moment, you are rewarded. The high-pitched whistle that has been your constant companion for hours lessens, becoming a muted moan. A small victory. You move on to the walls, tackling the largest of the cracks in the plaster. This is frustrating work. You push small wads of cloth into the fissures, but the crumbling plaster offers little purchase and some of them fall out. Still, you persist, plugging the worst of the holes, reducing the number of tiny, invisible daggers of cold that are pointed at you. You save your best weapon for last. You take the largest piece of sacking, roll it up into a long, tight sausage, and you wedge it firmly into the gap at the bottom of the door. The effect is immediate and deeply satisfying. The constant, ankle-chilling draft that has been sweeping across the floor is gone. You have sealed the main entrance. You stand back for a moment, feeling a small, tired flicker of accomplishment. You have built your defenses, and just as you allow yourself this moment of pride, a new furious gust of wind slams against the side of the house. The entire building seems to groan in protest. The window rattles violently in its frame, and one of the rags you so carefully placed is dislodged, falling silently to the floor. From the newly opened gap, the high-pitched whistle returns, louder this time, almost triumphant, as if mocking your efforts. You stare at the fallen rag, and you do not feel anger or defeat. You feel a kind of weary, ironic amusement. You understand the nature of this battle now. You are not fighting to win. Victory is not possible. The wind is tireless. It is patient. It has all the time in the world. You are just a tired apprentice with a small, finite pile of rags. Your efforts are not about achieving a final, permanent seal against the cold. They are about achieving a temporary truce. It is a quiet, ongoing negotiation with the winter. You are not trying to make the room warm. You are simply trying to make it less cold. You walk over, pick up the fallen rag from the floor, and return to the window. You find the source of the new whistle and begin once again the slow, meditative, and utterly futile process of pushing the cloth into the crack. This is your ritual. This is your work. The battle is not over. It will not be over until the spring. You are not fighting for victory. You are simply fighting to endure the night. The battle against the drafts is for now a stalemate. You have plugged the largest of the gaps, and the room feels marginally less like you are sleeping in an open field. The fire in the hearth has consumed its last offering of crate wood and is now settling into the long, slow, sullen burn of the sea coal. Its heat is a small, precious territory that the great occupying army of the cold has not yet conquered. The evening's duties are done. Your meager meal is a distant memory. The night has deepened and the time has come to prepare for its most dangerous phase, the attempt to sleep. When you are awake and moving, you can fight the cold. You can huddle by the fire, you can pace the small room, you can rub your hands together. But sleep is a surrender. It is a time when your body is still, when your own internal fire burns lowest, and when the cold is most likely to creep into your bones and do its real lasting damage. To simply lie down in your bed as it is now would be an invitation to a miserable, shivering, and perhaps even dangerous night. And so you begin your final, most important ritual of the evening. It is a piece of quiet, practical magic, a trick passed down from your grandmother, who learned it from her mother before her. It is the ritual of the heated stone. In the corner away from your precious pile of fuel sits your most trusted tool in this cold war. It is a single flat gray river stone about the size of your two hands held together. You found it on the muddy banks of the Thames one summer long ago and were drawn to its pleasing shape and its unusual smoothness, worn down by 1,000 years of tides. It has a satisfying heft, a feeling of permanence and solidity. It is a small, humble piece of the earth, and tonight you will ask it to become your sun. Using your iron tongs, you carefully lift the stone. It is as cold as the floor. It rests on a perfect vessel of the room's chill. You carry it to the hearth, and with a slow, deliberate movement, you place it directly into the heart of the glowing red embers. There is a soft, sharp hiss as the last of the room's ambient moisture on the stone's surface is instantly vaporized. The embers shift and settle around its weight, their red glow momentarily disturbed. And then the slow process of transformation begins. You sit and watch. This is a task that cannot be rushed. It requires patience. You are not just heating a rock. You are infusing it with the life of the fire. You are asking the stone to become a vessel to store the warmth that you cannot. At first, nothing seems to happen. The gray stone sits impassively among the glowing coals, a dark, cold island in a sea of fire. But slowly, subtly, a change occurs. The edges of the stone where it is in direct contact with the hottest embers begin to lose their hard gray definition. They begin to absorb the light and heat around them. A faint, dull red glow appears as if the stone is blushing from within. You continue to watch, your mind growing calm and focused, lulled by the soft crackle of the coal. You think of the stone's long life. You wonder if it once lay at the bottom of the river watching the Roman galleys sail overhead. You wonder if it felt the sun of 100 warmer summers on its surface. It has endured for centuries, and tonight its endurance will help you endure. The ritual connects you not just to your grandmother, but to the long, unbroken line of all people who have ever huddled against the cold and used the simple wisdom of the earth to survive. The glow deepens. The entire stone is now radiating a soft, pulsing cherry-red light. It no longer looks like a rock. It looks like a captured piece of the sunset, a solid, tangible piece of heat. It is ready. The retrieval is as careful as the placement. You use the tongs to grip the stone's edge, your movements slow and steady. As you lift it from the fire, a wave of intense dry heat washes over your face and hands. It is a powerful welcome sensation, the pure, concentrated essence of the fire itself. You carry it carefully, like a dangerous and holy relic, and place it on the flat hearthstone to cool for just a moment, its heat shimmering in the air. Beside the hearth is your final set of rags. These are not for plugging drafts. They are thick, soft pieces cut from an old woolen blanket saved for this purpose alone. You take the first piece and carefully using the tongs to nudge the stone, you begin to wrap it. You fold the cloth over one side, then the other. Then you take a second piece and wrap it again, turning the stone over and over, swaddling it in layer after layer of insulating wool. You are creating a small portable sun, its furious heat tamed and contained, ready to be deployed. You carry the warm, heavy bundle to the corner of the room that holds your bed, a simple straw-stuffed mattress on the floor covered with your one thin, scratchy blanket. You pull back the cold, damp-feeling covers and place the wrapped stone at the very foot of the mattress, deep in the center where your frozen feet will soon be. You push it down into the straw, creating a small, warm nest. You stand for a moment looking at the small, unremarkable lump under the blanket. The fire in the hearth will soon begin to fade. The room will grow colder still. But you have created a secret weapon. You have captured a piece of the fire, and you will take it to bed with you. It is a small act of foresight, a small victory of warmth over cold. It is the promise you have made to yourself that for a few precious hours at least you will not be cold. You will be safe, and you will be able to sleep. Your preparations are complete. The fire in the hearth has been fed its final frugal meal of the night and is now settling into a long, slow decline. The drafts have been plugged with your collection of rags, a futile but necessary defense. And the heated stone, your small captured sun, lies waiting for you, a lump of promised warmth under your thin blanket. There is nothing left to do now. The small active battles are over. All that remains is the long, quiet, passive war of endurance until morning. It is time to attempt to sleep. The process of getting into bed is its own careful ritual. You do not disrobe completely. That would be an act of madness in this cold. You simply remove your outermost layer of clothing, your heavy woolen coat, and fold it neatly, placing it on top of your blanket for an extra, albeit meager, layer of insulation. The rest of your clothes, your shirt, your breeches, your stockings remain on. They are your first line of defense. You pull back the blanket. A cloud of cold, stagnant air rises to meet you. The straw-stuffed mattress rustles a dry, lonely sound. You slide your legs into the bed, and the shock of the cold sheets is sharp and immediate, a physical blow that makes you gasp. You curl your body into a tight ball, trying to conserve every particle of your own body heat, and you begin the slow, cautious journey of inching your feet down toward the bottom of the bed, towards the promised land of the heated stone. When your frozen toes finally touch the thick wool rags wrapped around it, the sensation is one of pure, blissful relief. The warmth is not a harsh, fiery heat, but a deep, penetrating, and profoundly gentle comfort. It is a tiny island of summer in a vast frozen sea of winter bedding. You feel the warmth begin to seep into your feet, coaxing the feeling back into your numb toes and beginning its slow, miraculous journey up your legs. This small, localized comfort is your anchor. It is the one thing that will make sleep possible. You pull the scratchy blanket and your heavy coat up to your chin, tucking them in tightly around your shoulders, and close your eyes. Sleep does not come at once. Your body may be still, but your mind is awake, and with your eyes closed, your world becomes one of sound. You listen first to the sounds of the room itself. The low, almost inaudible hiss of the dying embers in the hearth. The occasional creak and groan of the old timber frame of the house as it shrinks and strains against the crushing cold. The sound of your own breathing, slow and steady in the profound quiet, a constant rhythm of life. Then your hearing expands. You listen past the confines of your small room to the sounds of the city outside. The wind is the loudest instrument in the orchestra of the night. It is a lonely, desolate sound, a ceaseless moaning that speaks of the vast, empty, frozen darkness that surrounds your small pocket of existence. You listen for the sounds of the frost fair on the river. The faint, tinny music has long since stopped. The roar of the crowds has died away. But you can still hear the occasional distant shout, a sound so faint and stripped of meaning that it might as well be the cry of a nocturnal bird. You hear the sharp, sudden crack of a bonfire on the ice as a log shifts, a sound that travels for miles through the dense frozen air. You imagine the watchmen huddled and cold making their slow patrols across the frozen river, their lanterns casting long, lonely pools of light on the unnatural landscape. You lie there, suspended in this world of sound, floating between your own small reality and the distant, ghostly life of the city. You are in a state of quiet wakefulness, your body cold, but for the small, steady anchor of warmth at your feet. And then you hear it. It starts as a deep, resonant vibration that you feel in your bones before you hear it with your ears. It is the first chime of a great church bell, likely from St. Paul's, beginning to strike the hour of midnight. The sound is utterly transformed by the frozen air. On a warm summer night, the bell's chime is clear and bright. Tonight it is dull, heavy, and strangely elongated. Each note seems to struggle to move through the dense, cold atmosphere, arriving at your ear with a somber, resonant weight. You count the chimes, your mind following along with the slow, patient tolling. 1. The sound hangs in the air, a deep, mournful hum. 2. You imagine the great bell swinging in its cold, dark tower. 3. You think of everyone else in London huddled in their own cold rooms, listening to this very same sound. For a moment, you feel a strange sense of connection, of shared experience in this city-wide vigil. You continue to count. 10, 11, 12. After the 12th and final chime has faded away, a new kind of silence descends. It is deeper, more profound. The last of the revelers have gone. The city has finally truly surrendered to the night. All that is left is you, the cold, and the wind. This is the heart of the darkness, the deepest, coldest part of the night. But you do not feel fear. The ritual of the bells is a comfort. It is a promise. It marks the turning of the tide. The day is over. A new one has begun. Dawn is now 12 hours closer. You pull your blanket a little tighter. The warmth from the stone is still a steady, reassuring presence at your feet. The memory of the tolling bell is a deep, slow lullaby. Your breathing deepens. Your thoughts begin to slow, to unravel. You have made it to the other side of midnight. And as you float in the deep, cold, quiet heart of the night, you feel your consciousness finally begin to drift, surrendering at last to a fragile, shallow, and deeply welcome sleep. You lie in your small, cold bed, suspended in the state between waking and sleeping. The warmth from the heated stone at your feet is a small, precious anchor in an ocean of cold, a tiny island of comfort you cling to. But the rest of your body is chilled, and the relentless whistling song of the wind keeps pulling you back from the shores of true slumber. Your mind is too active, too aware of the cold, too aware of the long hours that still stretch between now and the safety of dawn. You realize then that to quiet your shivering body, you must first quiet your restless mind. You need a distraction, an escape. With a sigh that forms a white cloud in the darkness, you make a calculated decision. You will light a candle. This is not a choice made lightly. A tallow candle, even a small and poorly made one, is a luxury. Every inch it burns is a penny turning to smoke and light. But tonight, the need for comfort, for a small pocket of light to hold against the vast darkness, outweighs the cost. You slide out of your bed, the shock of the cold floorboards sharp and immediate. You move to the hearth, where a few embers still pulse with a faint red glow. You take a long, thin splinter of wood, your kindling of kindling, and you hold its tip to the brightest ember. For a moment, nothing happens. Then the wood blackens, a wisp of smoke rises, and a tiny, hesitant flame appears at the end of the splinter. You cup your hand around this fragile new life and carry it carefully to the small table where your candle sits. The candle is lumpy and misshapen, made from rendered animal fat, and its rush wick is thick and uneven. It is a humble object. You touch your small flame to the wick. It sputters, hisses, and resists for a moment before catching. A small, greasy yellow flame rises, casting a warm, dancing, and wonderfully welcome glow in your corner of the room. The darkness retreats, and your small world feels a little safer. Now for the escape itself. You move to your small wooden chest, the only piece of furniture you own besides your bed and table. You lift the lid and retrieve your single, most treasured possession. It is not a fine piece of clothing or a hidden coin. It is a book, or rather a chapbook. It is a thin, small pamphlet of only 16 pages, crudely printed and clumsily stitched together. As a printer's apprentice, you are acutely, almost painfully aware of its flaws. The paper is cheap and rough, more gray than white. The black ink of the text is smudged in places, and the woodcut illustration on the cover, meant to depict a brave knight, looks more like a startled man in a pot. But it is yours. You traded a day's worth of bread for it last summer, and you have read it a dozen times. You get back into bed huddling under your blanket and coat, and you open the chapbook holding it close to the candle's flickering light. The title of the story is The Lost Maid and the Frost King. You begin to read, your finger tracing the familiar poorly printed words, and slowly the world of your cold garret room begins to fade away. The story is a simple one, a tale told around hearths like yours for generations. It tells of a young maiden named Alara who gets lost in a great ancient forest during the first snow of a long and terrible winter. Cold and alone, she stumbles upon a silent, glittering castle made entirely of ice. It is the home of the Frost King, a tall, sorrowful being with eyes the color of a frozen lake and a heart said to be a shard of pure, unmelting ice. He traps her in his silent, beautiful, and desperately cold castle. He tells her she can go free, but only if she can complete a single impossible task. She must weave a blanket for him from threads of spun moonlight, a blanket warm enough to soothe the chill in his frozen heart. As you read, huddled in your own small, cold reality, the story feels intensely real. The Frost King's castle is your garret room. The maiden's desperate search for warmth is your own. The cruel, beautiful, and all-encompassing cold of the story is the very same cold that is seeping through the walls around you. You feel a deep and powerful kinship with the lost girl, a shared struggle across the pages of a cheap book. You lose yourself in the tale. The whistle of the wind outside your window becomes the lonely howl of the Frost King pacing his icy halls. The creak of the old house becomes the groan of the castle's frozen gates. Your small flickering candle becomes the maiden's only spark of light and hope in the vast echoing darkness of her prison. The real world and the story world begin to merge their edges, blurring in the warm dancing candlelight. You read of how the maiden, clever and kind, does not try to fight the cold with fire. Instead, she begins to tell the Frost King stories. Stories of the sun of summer meadows, of warm bread, of a mother's love. She weaves her blanket not from moonlight, but from memories of warmth. And as she tells her tales, a single miraculous tear, a drop of pure, unfrozen water, falls from the Frost King's eye and melts a single spot on his icy throne. The candle in your room sputters, its flame dipping low. You are pulled from the story back to your own reality. You see that the candle has burned down by half. You know you must save the rest for another night, for another needed escape. You reluctantly find your place on the page, carefully fold the cheap little book closed, and place it safely back in your chest. You take a breath and blow out the candle. Your room is plunged back into a deep darkness, lit only by the faint dying red glow of the last embers in the hearth. The story is over for tonight, but its magic lingers in the air. The room is just as cold, the wind is just as loud, but you feel less alone. You have spent the last hour in the company of the brave maiden Alara. You have shared her struggle and witnessed her small, clever victory. The escape, though temporary, has provided you with a different kind of warmth, a warmth that has nothing to do with fire and everything to do with a shared story. Your mind, distracted from its own anxieties, is quiet now, and as you settle back down under your thin blanket, you feel that true, deep sleep is finally truly possible. The small, flickering warmth of the candle is gone, and the escape of the story has faded. You have been asleep, though you are not sure for how long. It was a shallow, fragile sleep, a state of half-dreaming where you were still aware of the cold, still aware of the hardness of your straw mattress. You are awoken not by a loud noise, but by a sudden and profound change in the silence. The wind, which has been your constant howling companion all night, has finally died down. The absence of its mournful whistle is what startles you. The city has fallen into a stillness so deep, so absolute that it feels unnatural. It is as if the entire world is holding its breath. You lie perfectly still in the darkness, listening. The fire in the hearth is now nothing more than a few faint, barely perceptible red embers, giving off no light and no heat. The room is intensely, bitingly cold. The small, precious warmth from the heated stone at your feet has faded to a mere memory, a ghostly hint of what was. This is it. The heart of the night, the hour of the wolf when the world is at its coldest, and dawn feels a lifetime away. And in this new profound silence, you begin to hear something else. It is not a sound from the city. It is not the sound of man or beast. It is a sound that seems to come from the very earth itself, a sound that vibrates up through the foundations of the old house and into your bones. It is a low, deep, resonant groan. It is the sound of a giant turning over in its sleep. It is long and drawn out, a note of immense pressure and immense weight. You lie frozen, listening, your heart beginning to pound in your chest. The sound fades, and the silence returns, now made even heavier by the memory of that strange, powerful noise. Then you hear it again, this time followed by a different sound. A sudden sharp crack, not loud like a gunshot, but sharp and clear, like the crack of a great whip in the frozen air. It is the sound of something vast and solid breaking under an unbearable strain. You realize with a sudden sense of awe and terror what you are hearing. It is the voice of the river. It is the sound of the river Thames itself speaking in its frozen sleep. You lie there in the darkness, no longer trying to sleep, but simply listening. You have become an audience for a strange and ancient concert. As your ears adjust, you begin to pick out the different instruments in this frozen orchestra. There is the deep, constant groan of the main ice sheet shifting and settling under the immense pressure of its own weight and the relentless pull of the tides far beneath it. There is the sharp, percussive crack of new fissures opening up in the surface, a sound that makes you imagine a black line instantly appearing on the white expanse. There is a strange, hollow popping sound like a cork being drawn from a giant bottle, as pockets of air or water trapped beneath the ice are suddenly compressed and released. And strangest of all, there is a high, thin, almost musical humming sound. It is a constant, ethereal vibration, a strange alien melody that seems to run through everything. It is the sound of the ice itself singing in the deep cold. You pull your thin blanket up to your chin, your fear slowly giving way to a sense of profound wonder. You are listening to a language you have never heard before, the language of a world transformed by ice. You imagine the river as a great slumbering beast, its icy hide groaning and stretching as it dreams. The sounds are its snores, its sighs, its half-muttered words. The river is not dead. It is sleeping. And you are privy to its secret dreams. You think of the other people out there in the cold, dark city. You think of the watchmen making their slow patrols across the ice of the Frostfair itself. You wonder what it must feel like to hear these sounds directly beneath your feet, to feel the deep groan vibrate through the soles of your boots. For a moment, you feel a strange sense of connection to these unseen strangers, all of you lying awake in the cold, listening to the powerful, mysterious voice of the frozen river. The initial shock of the strange sounds begins to fade, and they become a new kind of rhythm, a new kind of lullaby. The deep, resonant groan is a steady, calming bass note. The high, vibrating hum is a strange, hypnotic melody. The occasional sharp crack is a startling but not unwelcome beat in this symphony of the cold. The sounds are no longer frightening. They are the sounds of the world breathing in its sleep. They are a powerful, natural reminder of a force far greater than your own small struggles, your own cold room. And in that humbling realization, your own anxieties begin to feel small and distant. You are not fighting the night anymore. You are simply a part of it. You close your eyes again, but this time you are not trying to shut out the world. You are listening to it. You are letting the deep, strange, and ancient sounds of the frozen river fill your room, fill your mind. And as you float on that dark, powerful, groaning song of the ice, you feel your own consciousness finally truly begin to let go, drifting down into the deepest and most profound sleep of the night. You drift up from a shallow, dreamless sleep, not to a sound, but to the pressing, undeniable reality of the cold. The deep slumber induced by the river's strange song was a temporary truce, not a lasting peace. The night is still dark, but you can feel a subtle shift in the quality of the air. It is the deep, brittle cold that comes in the hours just before the dawn, the final assault of the winter night. The embers in the hearth have died completely, leaving behind only a faint gray ash and the memory of warmth. The heated stone at your feet, your small, faithful companion, has given up the last of its hoarded energy and is now just a lukewarm, heavy lump in the bed. Lying still is no longer an option. To lie still is to let the cold win. You know you must occupy your mind and your hands with a task, any task, to carry you through these final, most difficult hours. You slide out of bed, your body aching and stiff, and move to your small wooden chest. You do not light another candle. You cannot spare the expense. You will work by the faint ambient light of the moon on the frozen rooftops outside, a pale silvery glow that filters through your frosted window. You reach into the chest and pull out your mending kit. It is a humble collection, A simple cloth pouch containing a spool of coarse gray wool thread, a large, slightly bent needle made of bronze, and the object of your attention tonight, your only other pair of stockings. You hold them up in the dim light. They are thick and woolen, but worn thin with use, especially at the heel and toe. A new significant hole has opened up on the heel of the left one, a dark, gaping mouth in the worn fabric. You settle onto your stool as close to the dead hearth as you can get, and you begin your work. This is a task of quiet patience, a battle fought on a miniature scale. First, threading the needle. Your fingers are stiff and clumsy with cold, and the eye of the bent needle is small. It takes several long, frustrating moments in the near darkness, but finally you succeed. The thread is ready. You take the stocking and begin the slow meditative process of darning the hole. It is a stitch your mother taught you so long ago it feels like it happened in another life. Your hand moves in a steady, repetitive rhythm, a gentle weaving motion that you know by heart. Over, under, over, under. You are not just patching a hole. You are reweaving the fabric. You are creating something new and strong from a place of weakness. You are closing a gap. The only sound in the world is the soft, rhythmic shush of the wool thread as it passes through the old, worn fabric. It is a sound of quiet industry, of patient repair. It is the sound of holding things together. And as your hands work on autopilot, your mind, finally untethered from the immediate anxieties of the cold, begins to drift. The simple, repetitive motion is a key unlocking a door to the past, to a world that was not frozen. The rough wool of the stocking beneath your fingers conjures the memory of another kind of wool, the feeling of a lamb's fleece warm and greasy in the sun of a long-lost spring. You remember the small village you came from, a place of green hills and warm living earth. You remember the feeling of walking barefoot on sun-baked dirt, a sensation so foreign and so luxurious now that it feels like a fantasy. As you continue the steady shush-shush of the needle, other memories rise like ghosts. You remember the sounds of a summer evening. Not the cold, dead silence of this London night, but a silence that was alive, filled with the gentle chirping song of crickets, the lowing of cattle returning from the fields, the distant happy shouts of your siblings playing a game as the sun went down. You remember the tastes. The sharp, sweet burst of a wild strawberry picked from a bush and eaten right there, its juice warm from the sun. The comforting taste of your mother's stew, rich and thick, eaten from a wooden bowl by a warm, roaring fire. A real fire, a fire that filled a whole room with light and life. You pause in your work, your needle held mid-air. You are here in this frozen, silent gray room. But in your mind, you are there in a world of color and warmth and life. The contrast is so stark, so total, that it brings an ache to your chest, a feeling of loss so profound it is almost a physical pain. But then you look down at your work. You have woven a tight, strong patch over the hole. It is not beautiful. It is clumsy and thick. But it will hold. It will keep the wind from your skin. It will serve its purpose. And you realize that this act of mending is what connects those two worlds. The memory of your mother's hands teaching you this stitch is what allows you now to better survive this cold reality. The past is not just a source of painful longing, it is a source of practical strength. You finish the patch, knot the thread, and snip it with your teeth. You run your finger over the new rough weave. It is strong. You have made something whole again. You put the mending away. The hearth is now completely dark, a void of cold ash. The room is colder than it has been all night, but you feel a different kind of warmth inside you. It is the quiet, resilient warmth of memory. You have patched a hole in your stocking, and in doing so, you have momentarily patched the hole in your spirit, filling it with the light of a warmer time. You lie perfectly still, your eyes closed, and you listen to the silence. The profound, heavy, absolute blackness of the midnight hour has changed. The darkness now feels thinner. The oppressive weight of the deep night has begun to lift. It is a change you feel more than see, a quiet promise whispered to your senses. You take stock of your body. You are still cold, a deep ache settled into your bones. But the shivering has stopped. The desperate, biting chill that had you curled into a tight, defensive ball has lost its sharpest edge. You have passed through the heart of the night's frozen territory and have emerged weary and battered onto the other side. You survived. The thought is not a triumphant shout in your mind. It is a simple, quiet, and deeply reassuring fact that settles over you like a second blanket. You made it. Slowly, you open your eyes. You turn your head on your thin, straw-stuffed pillow to face the window. At first, you see nothing but the familiar darkness. But you watch and you wait, and you begin to notice the change. The window is no longer a perfect, impenetrable square of black. The blackness has softened to a deep, dark, bruised indigo. It is the very first faintest hint that the world is turning, that the sun, though still a world away, has not forgotten you. You watch, fascinated, as this slow, silent miracle unfolds. The indigo of the sky begins imperceptibly at first to lighten. It shifts to a deep, watery gray, the color of a pigeon's wing. And as the light outside grows, the shapes inside your small room begin to emerge from the darkness, like ghosts slowly taking on form. First, the sharp angle of the slanted ceiling. Then the dark, solid rectangle of your wooden chest. Then the spindly legs of the small table. Your world is reassembling itself piece by piece from the chaos of the night. You keep your gaze fixed on the window. The frost flower on the inside of the glass, which was an invisible pattern in the dark, now begins to reveal itself again. It catches the faint gray light, its intricate feathery patterns outlined against the slowly brightening sky. And then it happens, the moment you have been waiting for. On the far eastern horizon beyond the frozen rooftops of London, the first touch of color appears. It is a thin, fragile line of pale rose pink, as delicate as a single thread of silk embroidered onto the vast gray cloth of the dawn. It is soon joined by a soft, ethereal lavender. The colors are so faint, so gentle, you almost think you are imagining them. But they are there. It is a promise. It is the undeniable, irrefutable, and glorious promise of the sun. As the light grows, a new magic begins. The frost on your window, which was a symbol of the cold's terrible beauty, is now transformed. It catches the first direct golden rays of the rising sun and shatters them into 1,000 tiny sparkling points of light. A silent, dazzling explosion of diamonds and rainbows is thrown across the rough wooden wall of your room. Your small, cold, miserable garret is for a few breathtaking moments filled with a silent, otherworldly, and impossibly beautiful light. It is a private spectacle, a gift from the morning just for you. With the light comes the return of sound. The world is waking up. You hear the first tentative chirp of a single hardy sparrow, a bird brave enough to face the frozen morning. Then from far away you hear the deep resonant toll of the first church bell calling the faithful to morning prayers. The sounds from the frost fair on the river begin again, but they are different now. It is not the ghostly sound of nighttime revelry. It is the sound of a city waking up to work. The sharp, clear crack of an axe splitting firewood. The metallic clatter of a merchant opening the shutters of their booth. The distant, hearty shout of a man selling hot pies for breakfast. You finally sit up, swinging your legs out of the bed. Your body is stiff, your joints ache with a deep cold. But the profound weariness is mixed with an equally profound sense of relief. You have done it. You have endured. You have met the worst the winter night could throw at you, and you are still here. You walk to the window. The beautiful frost patterns are beginning to melt, tiny rivulets of water tracing paths down the cold glass. You can see your own faint, tired reflection in the pane. You look exhausted, but you look alive. You look out over the city of London, a vast, silent landscape of white roofs and smoking chimneys under a pale, winter blue sky. The night is over. You have survived. You stand at your small garret window, watching the morning light wash over the frozen rooftops of London. The frost flower on the glass, your beautiful, terrible companion through the night, weeps silent tears, its intricate patterns dissolving into rivulets of water that trace lazy paths down the pane. In the glass, you see your own reflection, a face pale with exhaustion, eyes heavy from a night of broken sleep, but undeniably, miraculously here. You have endured. The battle is over. The great oppressive enemy of the night has been defeated, not by any great act of heroism, but by the simple, reliable, and inevitable magic of the sunrise. The cold is still a presence in the room, a guest who has not yet had the grace to leave, but its power is broken. It no longer has the crushing, life-threatening weight it held in the dark. It is just cold. A fact of a winter morning, not a monster in the night. You turn away from the window. The day is beginning, and with it your duties. Your first task will be to coax a new fire to life in the dead hearth, a task that feels less desperate and more routine in the clear light of day. You will go to your job at the print shop. You will live another day. The long, cold night is over, and here, as your day in that frozen, long-ago city, begins your story as the apprentice comes to its quiet close. His watch is over. He has survived. But your story, the story of you here and now, continues in the deep and gentle comfort of this room. The you who shivered in a cold attic can finally rest. And the you who is lying here, now safe in your bed, can begin to truly and completely let go. Take a slow, deep breath and feel the difference between those two worlds. Think of the bed the apprentice slept in. A thin mattress stuffed with rustling straw laid out on cold, hard floorboards. A bed that offered no comfort, only a place to lie down. But you can feel the softness beneath you. Feel the gentle, even support of your own mattress, a surface that cradles you, that yields to the shape of your body. There is no straw. There are no hard floorboards. There is only comfort. Think of the cold, the relentless, seeping, bone-aching cold that was his constant adversary. His greatest luxury was a single heated stone, a temporary and hard-won prize. Your luxury is the effortless, even warmth that surrounds you now. Feel the comforting weight of your own blankets. They are not thin, scratchy, and worn. They are soft and clean, and they hold in your warmth like a gentle embrace. There is no need to hoard fuel. There is no need to tend a fire. You are simply warm. Allow yourself to sink deeper into that effortless, uncomplicated warmth. Think of the air he breathed. An air so cold it formed a white cloud with every exhalation, an air that stung his lungs. But the air in your room is still and calm and safe. Take a slow breath in. It is the air of peace. It does not bite or sting. It fills your lungs with a quiet tranquility. Think of the window in that garret room, a source of drafts covered in a beautiful but terrible layer of ice. There is no ice on your window. There is no frost, no draft rattling the frame. There is only the quiet, peaceful darkness of your own room, a sanctuary that is sealed against the troubles of the outside world. Here you are, completely safe. The apprentice survived his long, cold night, and you have survived your day, but your struggles are over for now. There are no more battles that need to be fought tonight. You can let go of the need to be vigilant, the need to endure. You can release your own worries. Think of them. They are not the great life or death struggles of a frozen city. They are smaller, they are lighter, and they can wait until morning. The sun will rise for you just as it did for him. But for now, you can give those worries permission to drift away. Let them become like the faint, ghostly sounds of the frost fair, distant and muffled, fading into the great quiet peace of the night. The watch is over. The story is told. Your only duty now is not to survive, but to rest, to surrender completely to the comfort that surrounds you. Feel the warmth of your blankets. Feel the softness of your pillow. Feel the quiet stillness of your room. Let the darkness behind your eyes be a safe and gentle friend. Feel the weight of your body heavy and relaxed, sinking into the comfort of your bed. There is nothing left to do now. There is nothing to be. Just rest. Drift now. Let go now. Sleep now.